What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Absolute Auction Podcast. I'm your host, Rhomandre. Join with me as my good friends, Mark Shu, Adam. What's going on, guys? Adam Seagal, sorry. How you guys doing today?
Happy weekend, everybody.
Right? Happy weekend. Very busy, aren't we all?
Doing
coming
well,
here on a Sunday.
That's right. Trying to beat the heat for sure too. It's been slowly creeping up, high 90s into the hundreds here in PA. Was able to get to the beach for a little bit this weekend, which was a very welcome relief. So just trying to beat the heat out here and grind some fantasy football.
All right, guys. So follow me at Rhyminer_FFB. Follow Adam at Always Auctions. Follow Mark at Primetime Mock. And also don't forget to follow the show at FF Auction Pod. All right, guys. Here we are, week 3. And last week, what the hell was I doing? Like, I was just came in, intro, straight to the freaking point. We were in, we were out 40 minutes. And then we're like, we didn't talk about anything fun. Like, no one knew about anything. No one knew what was going on. I talked to myself in the third freaking person when we were leaving. Like when I said for Ryan, I'm like, wait, why did I say in the third person? So what the hell,
I don't know.
Sorry for being the third person.
No, that's all good. You're good, and I'm having a good time on this show. So we're it's all fun right now.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, we're learning as we go. I mean, we're coming in here on a Sunday, which is odd because usually we do Monday nights, and here now we're going against the clock with the Mark because baby being down. So we're trying to fight it here as we can.
We're trying to beat the clock. Yes, right now he's at bay, so we're gonna see how that goes. But I'm ready to get into it. Let's see how if we can keep him quiet for a little bit.
Right. How about you, Adam? How's everything going? How's your kids?
No kids here. Nope, no kids here.
Man, it must be. Well, it must be nice, but me, like I got a 15, a 13, and a 10-year-old, so it's a lot easier than it is when you're trying to go against time. It's like, all right, basically all I'm doing now is just running back and forth to sports. So,
yeah.
All right, so as we get into it, let's touch back to what we missed last week, and that was Tee Higgins signing his franchise tag. Now, his AAV has been kind of on the fringe because we didn't know how he was going to be around, Adam, like $13, $14 range, somewhere in that range, because we didn't know if he was going to hold out. Was he going to do like the Le'Veon Bell where he just basically holds out for the whole season and doesn't do anything, then loses a year eligibility, or was he actually going to sign? Well, last week he finally actually signed, and what's the best way to approach him now as we come into our auction draft? Do we still look at him? Are we still trying to buy him as a wide receiver 2, or should we be looking more at him as a wide receiver 3?
I mean, personally, his AAV right now in Superflex is $13, and it's $14 in single QB. To me, that seems like a great value for what I think is like a solid wide receiver 2 on your offense, especially one that's tied with Joe Burrow. I mean, I think that offense is going to be really explosive this year. He scored 11.5 fantasy points a game last season while missing 5 games. So I think if you can get Higgins at close to or even at his current AAV, that's a buy for me every single time.
How about you? Oh, Mark, you're on mute. I think.
Yeah, for 13 or 14, that's definitely a good price for him. I think that maybe as we get closer to the season, it might creep back up a little bit more. But to be honest, right now, there are a lot of guys that are going ahead of him that I think are in that second, third round of like a snake draft that are going to be prioritized ahead of Tee Higgins. And I think for the most part, you'll be able to get him on a pretty cheap contract.
And like what? I don't know. Like it's hard for me to like get behind him as a wide receiver 2 because to start out the season, he started out really good. Week 2, he had basically over 20 points in that game. But after that, it was just kind of like more misses than it was hits. He would be lucky if we got 10 fantasy points out of him. And then again, around the end of the season, he had a couple of high-scoring games, but then he just fell back down where he'd be getting the targets, but he's not getting the yardage. He wasn't doing anything that was beneficial for us in a fantasy perspective. So you guys can go ahead and take him as a wide receiver 2. I will be more than happy to take him more as a wide receiver 3/flex type of play. just because I don't know if he's going to do the exact same thing as he did last year, as I feel like he will probably do something similar to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
to be honest, I think that you got an injured Tee Higgins for a lot of the year. You had an injured Joe Burrow for a lot of the year last year, and I think for the most part, again, if you're going bargain hunting and that's your wide receiver 2 price, I'm happy to take that. I think he definitely can perform as a wide receiver 2 for you most weeks. I mean, it's wide receiver is a volatile position. Like there are gonna be booms and busts for a lot of different guys. So for the most part, I think as long as the price sort of stays where it is, and people kind of forget that when T Higgins was healthy, that he was performing much better, and again with a healthy Joe Burrow, I think you could see a good return on investment there.
And he did come on at the end of the season. Like, I'm not going to knock him on that. Like, he had back-to-back games with 8 targets in week 15 and 16. Good enough to finish with over 20 fantasy points, be a wide receiver 10. But you look at all the other games before that, week 1, he had 8 targets, nothing. They finished his basically as wide receiver 109. So he put us in the hole there. And then week 2 is when he exploded. He had 12 targets, finished with 8 receptions for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Good enough for a wide receiver 4. But then, back again, next week, it was another 8 targets, two catches for 21 yards, wide receiver 83. It's like these are the volatilities that you're gonna have to possibly keep putting up with as the season goes on with him next season. Or do you guys actually think he could bounce back to his 2022? I think it was 2022.
I mean, I think with Higgins, like you said, Ryan, it's probably always going to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride with him. I don't think he's, a wide receiver you can expect to, put up 15, 16 points a game at, week in and week out. But for his price right now, I mean, if I would buy him for that as my wide receiver too. If he starts to creep up and gets a little more expensive, if he goes into like, the mid to high 20s, like the Olaves or the Marvin Harrisons, I don't think I'm going to pay that much for him. But if I can get him for, 15, 16, $17 and have him as a wide receiver too, or even possibly as a wide receiver 3, I'd be ecstatic. I would take that all day.
Yeah, I'll take the wide receiver 3 value all day long. But I'm not taking that as wide receiver 2 just because I want to win week in, week out. And to me, I would rather have him in best ball than I would in any redraft leagues right now, to be honest with you guys. All right, and then moving on. Rhomandre Stevenson signs a 4-year extension, guys. What do we think of that?
I mean, his AAV right now is $13 both in Superflex and 1QB leagues. And I think because of the news of the extension, that price is probably going to steadily rise as we get closer to the season. However, I don't really, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't really think anyone expects the Patriots offense this year to generate a lot of points. I mean, last year they were tied for dead last with Carolina. And even if you project them to be a little bit better, a little bit of a bump, it's kind of hard for me to envision Stevenson getting a lot of scoring opportunities. So I really doubt that you're going to be able to get him for any cheaper than that. And in that case, I'm probably going to pass.
Right, and I think with him sharing a backfield with Antonio Gibson, we saw Ezekiel Elliott take a healthy share from Rhomandre last year as well. So I feel like for the most part, bad offense that we're not projecting to be very good, and split workload, probably losing some of the pass catching to Antonio Gibson. That's going to put him in a 0 RB build, maybe. But I'm still going to be looking to get him cheaper, and I don't think I'm going to. So yeah, I'll probably pass it there.
I think he'll still stay where he's at. I mean, the contract's only for 4 years, $36 million with $17 million guaranteed, and like he has a lot of bonus incentives where his value might only go up like $1 or $2. I don't see it like basically making a huge jump where a lot of people might think it could, just because like, oh well, he's signed for 4 years. This could be the contract that this could give me that running back I need to really push me up to high RB2, low end RB1 numbers. I don't see that kind of value actually jumping in on him. I mean, you have to remember, like, the salary that he's making makes him the 7th highest paid running back. So is he actually going to get a lot of carries? And looking at his stats, like he was more of a PPR type of back. So in PPR leagues, I could definitely see him being the type of running back I want to target as my RB2. I mean, he's had 6 games with over 5 targets last season, and that was only being played in 13 games. And then, total yards, total touchdowns. He had as high as a finish as RB2, but it's also as low as a finish as RB48. So to have that up and down kind of break, it's kind of what you should expect from your RB2, to be honest with you. But overall, I just see him being more of that running back that you're still going to be able to get at cost.
Yeah, it's funny. Stevenson's like he's such a polarizing fantasy player. I think like there's so many fantasy players that love him, and then others that are just like, I'm not touching him. I would be more comfortable with Stevenson as my like RB3 or a flex, kind of like what you said about Higgins. I don't know if I really want him as an RB2, but I could see him being a pretty effective like RB3/flex play for you, and in PPR for sure. Like he still is going to get a decent amount of pass catching work. I think even with Gibson there, I just don't see the Patriots offense being, super explosive. I don't know if they're going to really have a lot of scoring opportunities.
So basically, you're trying to compare like the Patriots offense and like their fantasy players to that of Denver Broncos. They're basically almost like kind of like an avoid in a type of way.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think for fantasy purposes, like you kind of always want to try to target players that are on good offenses, ones that are going to give you the opportunities to score. And I just, again, even if you project the Patriots to be a little bit better this season, I just don't see them being like even middle of the pack and as far as total points scored for the team. So they're probably an offense that I'm probably going to try to avoid altogether.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I mean,
like
investment in an offense in general at price can. I mean, it's not something that we talk about all that often in auctions, but you hear about it. You're targeting good offenses in your snake drafts as well. So if you're willing to pay up and pay like double-digit dollars for Rhomandre Stevenson, not that he couldn't beat that price, but you're also investing in the offense that comes with it, and that's kind of where I'm out.
Sorry, so you sound like you guys are out, and I'm still in on Rhomandre Stevenson. That's fine. All right. That was basically it for the news today. It's kind of this what kind of sucks about like the off season right now this time of year, because it's just so dead. So we always have to look to something to kind of get us up and going. Try to get us back in the mood. And today, we're going to talk about our QB and tight end strategies. So the best way to do it is to start talking about quarterbacks, right? Because quarterback position seems to be like one of the sought after positions, right? If the way you guys look at it. And when building a strategy, like I always like to say, like, let me look at my par sheet and kind of go from there. And based on like those type of values, like how do you want to build it? Is it a Superflex league? Is it a 1 QB league?
QB leagues, I'm looking at the top, 4 or 5 guys: Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I'm looking to, if I can get those guys in like the $25 range, and I'll pretty much bid up all 4 of those guys to $25 just to make sure that they go for at least that. That's kind of where I start to cap out. But if it does, the bidding seems like it's slowing down at 25, 26, maybe I put another dollar on. But after that, if I don't land one of those top 4, I'm really, for the most part, looking in the $5 and below bargain basement kind of shopping deal where I can find players that are going to go for a few dollars every round. Now this year, I will say that there are a few more guys in the middle, like Brock Purdy or Jordan Love or like Joe Burrow, that can go in like the $10 to $12 range that I'm actually kind of willing to still maybe spend up on that. But for the most part, I'm just trying to go at the top of the position where I'm getting the advantage points wise, or at the bottom of the barrel because quarterback starts to flatten out a lot more than other onesie positions like tight end, I'll go to the very back and get them at the lowest price that I can possibly do.
Yeah, like look at it. Sorry, my screen ended up crashing, so that way I couldn't even share. It wouldn't let me share it. So we got Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen as the top quarterbacks in Superflex right now at $48. So basically, you can almost say that's one tier in its own, right? Then our next set of white quarterbacks we have is Lamar Jackson at 42, C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson at 39, Joe Burrow at 7, or Joe Burrow at 32, Kyler Murray at 31, Dak Prescott at 30, and Jordan Love coming at number 10 at 28. Now, like one quarterback I love to target here, if I can, is Anthony Richardson. Just the upside alone of his rushing and the way he can throw the ball is one quarterback I'm willing to pay. I'm willing to pay that $9 less. But and then as you look at it as it goes down further, like the price just continues to drop. I mean, the drop from Anthony Richardson as QB6 to Joe Burrow to QB7 is $7. So that $7 drop to go down, and then you go down $1 more to Kyler Murray for $31. Like these are almost like the quarterbacks I almost rather have down here if I can't get Anthony Richardson. Like if Anthony Richardson starts going like towards like the Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen type of cost, I'm out, and I'll just look to drop down these other quarterbacks. How do you guys feel about the top 12 right now?
We're talking super flex, I think, for the most part. My quarterback budget almost doubles when I'm going from a one QB to a super flex, to be honest. And again, I'm looking to pay up for one of those top 5. I also in super flex I'm cool with making an exception on Anthony Richardson and putting him in that elite tier. That I'll push the price up. And if he lands at like 38, or I think it was 38 you had mentioned on the screen.
39.
So yeah, at 39, like that's not a bad price. But like you said, I don't mind with Superflex trying to get 2 of my players that I kind of see as like, well, they could finish top 12 because you can really get a good discount. Like we had Superflex draft that Adam had hosted earlier this week. And I felt really good about landing Joe Burrow at 36 and Matt Stafford at 16, where you're paying for your 2 quarterbacks the price you'd be paying for one Josh Allen, because you still have to fill the rest of your positions. And I know he had just said that $32 for Joe Burrow is what the AAV is, but I don't mind paying a little more sometimes for Joe Burrow. Again, I think he's probably underrated, and again, he's an offense that I want a piece of. So I'm okay with spending way down and getting a $12 discount on say Patrick Mahomes or somebody like that.
Yeah, like Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts have, or actually no, not Jalen Hurts, but Josh Allen have actually been kind of pretty steady. For Joe Burrow, like, you get him at 32. Like one draft he went for 36, another draft he went for 28. So taking the AAV of that, you getting that for $32 overall. So you gotta understand the ups and downs of these AAVs, average auction values. Where like you look at Justin Herbert, his AAV is at $27 right now at QB 11. Jared Goff, QB 12 at 25, and Tua Tagovailoa at 23. Like basically, you almost get those 2 quarterbacks for the price of one of Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. So where I'm actually willing to drop down to 11 and lower, and even like look at trying to pair those up as my quarterbacks instead of trying to buy up. Because like if I start to buy up like too high, like if I'm paying that top dollar, I feel like I'm really like affecting my team a lot more than benefiting it. So I try to figure out how to budget it better instead of saying like, all right, if I'm going to spend this kind of money at my quarterback position in Superflex, where am I going to take the cut at? And you have to kind of think of that in a hard way where, is it really worth spending up for that QB1, or would you rather have, back end QB1s and high end QB2s with the upside to finish as QB1s?
Right now in my tier of I have my elite platinum tier, and then I have my very good gradish gold tier. I've got about 24 quarterbacks that I can consider in that gold tier that I could see having at least a top 16 finish, which in Superflex is still very helpful on your back end, and with the possibility of being a top 12 quarterback. So I'm happy with that second tier. And one thing that that Adam had said last week about the par sheets is that in that second tier, that one tier down, you get a lot more fluctuation in the price. Whereas when you hit the top of the tier, in the elite tier, all those guys are going like $1 or $2 separating them in their price. Whereas, again, there's a lot of volatility in that second round of quarterbacks, but also, again, you're getting them at different prices where the risk reward changes and makes them a good value. So you can find if you can find two good quarterbacks in that range, you might get that volatility where you can get a couple of them on the cheaper side, and they're all kind of similar. They're not, they all kind of produce similar numbers on a week in and week out basis. They're all the kind of quarterbacks that are vying for the back end of the top 12 on a week to week basis. So if you can find two that are really good, get them for a price that might even be getting better, more than 2 for 1 on a elite tier player. That can help save your money and help your depth.
Plus, the funny thing, looking at like QB 13 to QB 20, the difference in price is $9. So, the drop down of getting multiples at that position instead of trying to go for the elite tier could be very beneficial for you and your team as the season goes along, especially like if it comes to like, the waiver wire could be thin, because especially in Superflex, basically every quarterback is going to be gone. Some teams will have 3, some teams will have even 4 quarterbacks on their rosters. So you also have to look at it that kind of way of when you're building your roster. Like, you can get Kirk Cousins as low as $15 right now. And then, for $12, QB 20 Deshaun Watson. I mean, right then and there, you don't even have $30 spent yet, and you already have 2 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then also looking at other quarterbacks, like, who's your guys' favorite sleepers right now? Like, if you were to get a good bargain quarterback right now, say you in Superflex, who wants one you're willing to target?
I like Stafford a lot. I think for the most part, he's still got a really good offense to work with. He's got one of the best offensive minds. He gets a lot of devaluation, I think, from dynasty leagues, because we're still in kind of dynasty season at this point. So he's not sexy, and not sexy usually means cheap, and cheap, when it still provides points, is good for me. I won quite a few leagues with Matthew Stafford as my quarterback too last year, so feeling good about that. But also, in general, I think, in one quarterback leagues, he's going for $1, $2, right? Like that's the kind of value that you're looking for when you're not willing to spend up. You're looking to find a guy who has QB1 upside at a fraction of the price. So the back end, I'm always looking at Stafford, but there are a lot of guys. Geno often goes so cheap. I'm willing to take Geno, willing to take Baker Mayfield, as long as the price is still good, and they're going in that bargain range. There are a lot of people that can work for a Superflex league for that second quarterback, and I think in general, as long as you have 2 that you can rely on, and you want to maybe prioritize a third in to have on your bench, but even still, I think there are a lot of guys. Like I got right now the starting quarterback in Minnesota is Sam Darnold. You get him for $1 every time, and maybe he's not the long-term starter, but in a redraft league, he's gonna start the season. He's gonna be, and you know what? If that's how you gotta play it, because that's how your roster's set up, I don't think there's anything wrong with going in and starting for Darnold, because he's had QB1 performances in the past few stops that he's had, and he's got a pretty ready to go offense right now.
All right, Adam, what's one Superflex QB sleeper you like to try to get in all your drafts if you can?
Yeah, well, Mark actually took the one I was going to mention. That was Darnold. Yeah,
sorry.
No. I mean, you made all the points. I mean, he's got a good offense. He's got one of the best receivers in the game. An up and coming guy in Addison. I mean, I think the offense is going to be fairly good. He's got rushing ability. Another guy that I'll mention also kind of in that same vein, and like with Darnold, you probably don't want him as like your QB2, but I'd love him as my QB3, and that's Daniel Jones. Just for the same reasons. He's basically free in drafts. He's got, a potentially an all-star rookie in Neighbors. We've seen what he can do with his legs. Again, I'm not saying that he's, going to be a top 10 quarterback, but if you can get him for $1 and have him as your third quarterback, I'm all over that.
Man, I love it. I love it. Superflex is such a hard area to try to figure out where to get your second and third QB at, because you have the opportunity to either buy up and spend up on higher end QBs, basically get 2 top 12 you want, or you could be in the middle of the pack. But one quarterback I always find funny, I don't know why he's always keeps going. And as you guys already said, Sam Darnold. We keep hearing this news on Sam Darnold about how he's going to start the season, how he's looking better than J.J. McCarthy. Yet J.J. McCarthy is the one that keeps getting drafted in the Superflex draft. He's coming in at $4. The one quarterback I really have at the same exact cost, Will Levis, man. They are trying to build around that team, give him the players he needs. They just signed Tony Pollard to his contract. You got who else? They just got another receiver also outside of DeAndre Hopkins. I'm trying to think who it is.
Ridley.
Oh yeah, Calvin Ridley signed a huge ass contract. Thank you, Adam. Jeez, Pete, what a brain fart. I mean, they're trying to basically build around him to kind of make him be a quarterback, because they had an opportunity to draft a quarterback and they passed up on it. They had a top 10 pick and they decided to go offensive lineman. What's that kind of tell you? They trust Will Levis here, and I'm also trusting him.
Historically, I think even we're talking, 10, 15 years ago, the Titans have always been historically a super run heavy team, but the philosophy is kind of, at least it seems like it's changed. So yeah, I mean, if they are going to be moving towards more of a pass heavy offense, I think Levis is a great little sleeper pick in your auction drafts. He went for $5 in our last Superflex league, and I think he could definitely be one that cracks the top 12 this year. He's got all the weapons and the guys around him to absolutely do that, and he can run a little bit too.
Absolutely, yeah. The rushing upside, putting mayonnaise in his coffee, whatever it takes, man. It's well worth it in the long run. All right, moving over to one QB real quick, just to kind of give a quick overview. The cost drops drastically compared to Superflex. We have Allen at number 1 at $36, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, $29, Lamar Jackson, $26, and then you go all the way down to number 12, Tua Tagovailoa, $7. So the freaking $29 drop from QB1 to QB12 is just insane in one QB leagues. How do you guys like to go through your drafts in one QB leagues? Do you try to aim high, or do you try to aim for middle, or do you kind of just go to the back end and hope for the best of trying to pick these upside type of plays?
I mean, if we're talking one QB, single quarterback leagues, look no further than our last single QB auction mock draft. I'm going to take a second and just name all the quarterbacks who went for $5 or less. Okay, here we go. Dak, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Stafford, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Will Levis, Tua, Baker, and J.J. McCarthy. That's 14 guys who went for $5 or less. And I would argue that out of those 14, there's probably at least 10 of them I'd be perfectly happy and satisfied with as my starting quarterback in a one QB league. I mean, honestly, my advice for drafters in single QB leagues, save your bankroll for other positions, especially if you play in a league where you're starting 3 receivers and or multiple flex positions. Without a doubt, you should really prioritize those positions over your quarterback. Let other drafters spend upwards of 3, 4, or even 4 times as much. The quarterback position gets really devalued in single quarterback leagues. So I'm always going to try and find, one of those guys who I can draft for cheap and just prioritize my running backs and my quarterbacks and other positions. Your quarterback league is just not as important as it is in a super flex league.
Oh yeah. The back end ones 100% get devalued. And largely because the top end often get overvalued, right? Mm-hmm. Is what happens. The top end ends up getting overvalued, and if you're willing to spend, I mean, I'm seeing there are drafts. I think the last one you put together had Josh Allen going $34, and Mahomes went for 30 to Ryan, and like 30 is not bad. Like I think you gotta stack with that one, Ryan. You got the Mahomes
Yes.
Kelsey stack, and you had already had Kelsey. Like I'm willing to spend an extra dollar or two, to complete a stack for a quarterback like that. That's fine with me. But in general, I think like once it gets past like that 12.5%, in a quarterback league, you're probably 12.5% is $25. As it starts to creep up there, it's slowly just they lose their actual edge that you think that you're getting with a high end quarterback.
Absolutely. And that like brings me up to like Jared Goff as like one of my favorite like quarterbacks to get here. Like as you said, Adam, for $5 or less, Jared Goff had multiple touchdowns last season in dome. I think it was like so it was like 2 to 3 touchdowns almost every game when he was in the dome. This season he plays in the dome in the first 13 games. So to get him for $5 or less, that is the best freaking value I can see out there right now. And plus the way this offense is just continuing to grow, I love this offense in general. And then moving on to tight end. Mark, you brought it in on the perfect way, man. I went with the stack. And that's one way I like to do it. Like if I'm gonna pay up and get the quarterback, like there's certain value as I do like to do in my tier sheet. I'll say, you know what, I'm willing to spend this much for a quarterback just because I want to see how I can build the rest of my team. When I got Patrick Mahomes at that $29 value, I'm like, you know what, let me see if I can build this stack and try to get Kelsey as a stacking value to see if I can actually build my team around that. And looking at it, like I was actually quite surprised to actually get a team like that. Sure, I spent $29 on or $30 on Patrick Mahomes, but I was able to get Kelsey for 25. And to be honest with you, the more I looked at it, the more I also cringed at the same time because looking at the other tight ends going around that value or around him, Dalton Kincaid at 14, Kyle Pitts at 19, Evan Ingram at 11, Trey McBride at 15, Mark Andrews at 15. I felt like I overspent on Travis Kelsey, but I also want to try to build that stack just because the two of them alone do have that week winning upside.
For what it's worth, I don't think you actually overspent. I kind of am good with 25 for Kelsey, and like honestly, tight ends, the elite level tight ends, I'm more willing to push toward $30 than I am quarterbacks because the drop off at tight end is so much sharper than the one that is a quarterback. But for the most part, yeah, right now in the auction mocks we've been doing, it seems like all those tight ends are getting way devalued. Even in I thought that getting them at $15, $16 was a good price in a Superflex, but in a 1QB, I feel like and you're seeing Mark Andrews go for $15. That just seems like highway robbery. Like, it seems like something's wrong here in that market that I think it probably needs to go up a little more. I think everybody's kind of in we don't have a clear-cut number one tight end. It could be any of these guys. But you know what? All of them are deserving, and if you're willing to take the risk on it, like I don't see why you wouldn't be willing to spend like in the $24 to $30 range for a tight end. But just like quarterback, I'm doing the exact same strategy of pay up or pay down. So because I can find Luke Musgrave for $1, you can find you can find a lot of players like Hunter Henry. I think we talked about not really liking spending your money on offenses that you don't like so much, but I do like the fact that one, he's going for $1, and two, that's a very tight end heavy system. So you think that him being a veteran holdover, one of the big vets on the team, that he might be a little more involved in the offense and be worth, again, $1. And if he's not, the opportunity cost is so low that I can drop him. I can pick up another tight end and play the streaming waiver wire, which is what most of us are doing if we're not landing that top 3 tight end.
And it's funny, Adam, too, like last season, you did all the AAVs for our website, Faceoff Sports Network, which you can find at fffaceoff.com. And like Mark said, I didn't actually spend up on tight end, this, like in that draft, getting Travis Kelsey for $25. Because last season, Kelsey was going for, on average, $46 as the highest tight end. And Mark Andrews was right behind that at $27. So, yeah.
That's what I mean.
The tight end value, You're right, Mark, is going way down, actually. So
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, is he really that? Like, is Kelsey really that? I mean, I get that he might have burned you, but he was still he still had a good season. Like, as far as most tight ends is concerned, he's still an edge over. He was an edge over Laporta, obviously, but like he was an edge over most other guys. And to think that he goes from like being a first round caliber player or early second round caliber player last year to a guy that's like going in the late fourth is just kind of, it doesn't make sense to me.
it's a
Well,
steal.
I've got a theory as to why this is happening. And I think it's because people are starting to realize that the tight end position right now has never been deeper. I mean, do you remember when like Gronk was like a top 5 pick, and if you didn't land him or like Jimmy Graham, you were basically just ignoring the position altogether?
Oh yeah,
And I think that's what's happening. I mean, we could literally, or well, and legitimately have close to like 20 players at tight end this coming season who could score over 9 fantasy points a game in PPR. There were 15 last year alone. So there always seems to be a guy who's completely overlooked in drafts and breaks out to become like a rock solid tight end. I mean, think Jake Ferguson last year. In the 16 single quarterback auction mocks I hosted last year, Ferguson was only drafted once, and he wasn't drafted at all in any of the Superflex mocks. So the number of what I would call like mid-tier level guys, those guys you probably have ranked somewhere in your like 2 to 4 tier range, there are more draftable starters than ever before. And I think similar kind of to what you guys said, like I'm probably going to target players in this range and also try to snag another guy who I think is currently very undervalued by the market and has the potential to break out. And like we were talking like quarterback sleepers, and guys that we like last year. One of the guys I'm targeting right now is Taysom Hill. If you play in a league that has him as, tight end eligibility, especially with Juwan Johnson potentially missing partway the season. They've already said that they want to get Hill involved even more. So he's a guy that I'm absolutely targeting, and I think you can get him for $1. Maybe not. Maybe you can even get him off waivers. He may not even be drafted in a lot of your leagues.
no, he's coming in at $1, man. Like he's been
Yeah.
only drafted maybe once or twice, but most of the time
Mm-hmm.
everyone just kind of passes him up. But yeah, on sleeper though, he's still listed as a tight end, so
Yeah.
that's a definitely solid one. One favorite one I like too at that dollar mark, it is Hunter Henry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not a huge fan of the New England Patriots at all, but still, what is there in New England right now around Drake May? Hunter Henry seems like that perfect piece to add at the end of the draft, where it's just like you throw $1 at it and you're like, if he hits, he hits. If not, I got to, next week I can go find that next player and just throw him in my lineup if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I talked a few minutes ago about how much I like Henry as a dart throw. I also like throwing out Noah Fant. He's, it seems like everybody else has left that tight end room in Seattle. Not to say that he's a top pass catcher, but he could get plenty of plenty of passes thrown his way as like one of the only guys. So he'll be on the field running routes most of the time. And there's one more that's escaping me right now.
But I'll name another one or two guys I'm targeting, and one of them is Pat Fryermuth. Especially if Pittsburgh doesn't add any more receivers, I think he's probably going to be the number one. Well, not the number one, but at least no worse than the number 2 target in that offense behind Pickens. And then another guy who I'll throw out is Cade Otton on Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah,
He played like 90-ish% of like all the snaps last year. I mean, he was on the field all the time, and he's another guy who he's young, he's got a good offense, and again, he's cheap. You can get him for $1 in your drafts. Like, why not take a flyer on these guys?
All right, I've got another one for you. How about call him a post-hype tight end sleeper. Has gotten plenty of smoke the past couple seasons, has always disappointed, but now he lands in Miami. What do we think about Jonnu Smith? I've never actually been that in on Jonnu Smith until this year because he is so cheap and he's going for $1. I will throw $1 there. If you had an auction any of the last 3 years, he was never going for $1. There was always somebody that was trying to spend 2, 3, 4. But now that he's finally $1, he's on an offense that I like. I'm willing to be in there. Other ones, I actually kind of am interested to see if maybe Greg Dulcich still kind of has it too. Those are that's another guy that I'm interested in. But again, these are guys that I'm willing to cut, week 1. So if they don't work out, $1 doesn't mean much. That's the thing that's nice about when you have players that you're looking to go to $1, because you have a waiver wire. And if you're willing to spend up on a player, you're less likely to cut that player. But if you don't spend if you spend $1, there's no reason you shouldn't want to cut them if they're not performing. But when you have that opportunity cost attached to a tight end, makes them harder to get rid of. So it's a yin and yang. If you can't get one of the top end guys that you like at a good price, there's always another way. There's always a way to work your budget around it. And then again, once you work your budget down to $1, you have all this extra money somewhere else that you can spend.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that's the best way to say it. Like, if you don't want to spend on tight end, you just basically put $3 to your tight end position and get 3 of them even. Yeah, it might be a waste on your roster spots, but at the same time, 1 or 2 might hit. And then if they do, another team might be looking for them. So you got to trade pieces at that point. And then looking at it, would you guys rather have Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce? They're both going for the same value right now at $22. To me, I feel like I really have Kelce over Laporta just because I feel like Laporta's touchdown is what kind of helped him when he had 10 touchdowns compared to Kelce and his 5.
Yeah, I think that people have been saying, with Kelce, look what happened last year. He didn't really play a whole lot. They were kind of saving him for the playoffs. And yeah, it's a valid argument. The Chiefs are chasing, a dynasty right now. Is it possible that they, leave him off the field? He doesn't play as much and they save him for the last, for the majority of the season, for those last couple weeks. Honestly, if it came down to both players, I'm taking who's ever cheaper in auctions. That's how I'm looking at it.
I agree. I think Laporta, Mark Andrews, and Kelce are all kind of in the same bubble for me, and it's just like whoever is cheaper, that's who I'm going to prefer. At the end of the day, sometimes you don't know what the price is going to go. You might have one that you're on the hook for, and you say that's a good price. You don't know what the other 2 are going to go for. You still pull the trigger, and then someone goes a little cheaper. But as long as you feel comfortable with the price you're going at, again, you right now you can get them for $15, $15, $20, $25, and that's all within the range that I'm willing to go. If he's getting above 30, that's like your second round pick value range. And that's where it starts to get a little more hairy, but under $30, it's pretty easy yes for me for most of those guys. And then Trey McBride just slightly below that in that low 20s range.
Yeah, he comes in at tight end 3 at $18. I'm still kind of nervous about him. Yeah, he was killing it last year, especially when Zach Ertz left. But with Marvin Harrison coming in, I just don't see that type of same performance coming out of him. Give me Kyle Pitts. Give me Dalton Kincaid. I actually like Dalton Kincaid a lot. Where I actually think he could actually be the tight end 1 this season. As crazy as it may sound, look at that offense around stuff. Stephon Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. Josh Allen really has no wide receivers. This could be the new Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce combo over on the east side of the U.S. here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kincaid is going to be Buffalo's default number 1 wide receiver. That's just how it is.
And at $13, man, that's a freaking deal I love. Well, there's one other deal I love. If I can get this QB and tight end stack, I am going TJ Hawkinson and Tua Tagovailoa for the Hock Tua Stack here, guys. I feel about that for $9. Hey, we had to do it. Everything's about the Hock Tua girl. Why not do it in a fantasy football related type of view? I had to do it.
Over under on league mates that have that team name, in all the leagues you play in. I think I'm gonna set mine at 4.5.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Hey man, for $11 combination, you can have both of them on your team, so it's a possibility. All right, guys. Anything else we want to touch on tight ends? As of right now, the value of them is great. That's all I can really say compared to what we were seeing last season.
Yeah, there's just so much depth. There's just so much depth at the position right now. I'm probably going to try and look for one of those guys in the mid tier range. But yeah, I mean, like Mark was saying, if you can get Kelsey, Andrews, Laporta, if they don't have if they're in that $15-$20 range, or even if you can get them for less, that's an easy click for me.
Right.
Take advantage while you can.
Yeah.
Dude, seriously, like I cannot pass up that value. Like, man, Mark, you made me feel better about and now spending up on Kelsey to get him for $25 compared to what he was going to last season. So
no,
I'm
man, it's a
down on
good
that.
deal. It's a good value. I think it's broken right now because everyone's kind of unsure. But by the time the season rolls around, I think these prices will all kind of lift a little bit. But it's hard to know. We're in that time of year where there's like a lot of guys have potential, and then over the course of training camp, we're going to get half the field might get hurt. Half our running backs or half our tight ends might end up going, and it changes everything. So all of a sudden, maybe Kelsey goes way more expensive later on down the line. But, again, right now, take it, enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm eating it up in best ball right now. So
speaking of man, I don't know how much more we can take for this, guys. We got any questions out there? Anyone see anything? I don't see anything out there.
No, not that I saw.
But
man, if
Mark,
you have, that's right. Hey, I did make it. You know what? My wife came and relieved me in the middle, so that ended up helping out. But if you do have questions, please make sure you email the show. We got that email address for you. It's is it absoluteauction@gmail.com?
absoluteauctionpodcast@gmail.com, guys.
absoluteauctionpodcast@gmail.com. So if you have any questions about auction leagues, we'd love to hear from you, and we would love to answer them.
Absolutely. Or you can even DM us, personally on Twitter, or leave a comment on the YouTube page. Let us know, what you're looking for. We can bring up as a topic the following week. So we're always here to help you guys.
I still don't mess around too much on Twitter, but if you do DM me, mine are open, and I will answer any auction question. I love talking auction, so I'll find you and I will answer it for you.
All right, guys. All right, I'm gonna try to do it right this time. Just because I feel like last week I killed it by saying myself in the third person. For Ryan, but this time I'm gonna do it right. For Mark, for Adam, and myself, this is the Absolute Auction Podcast. Be sure to follow us at FF Auction Pod. Jeez, PC. I'm already screwing up the outro now. What the hell am I doing? Follow us on Twitter, X, and be sure to subscribe to the show, leave a comment, and also hit up FF Face Off for all your fantasy football needs, as we are a part of the FF Fantasy. Jeez, Pete, guys, I had not come out right. We are part of the Face Off Sports Network. All right. Take care, guys.
Okay. Happy weekend, everybody.
See you next time.